Okay. So when you first start out walking, um, you have to make the soloist feel like, you know, they can literally play anything on top of you. You know what I'm saying? Basically, and I mean that in the actual literal way. You know, where they feel like they can just pick notes randomly, and it's gonna feel good because you feel good. You know what I'm saying? As a bass player. So, you know, essentially, when you first starting out to learn how to play this music, you have to approach it with reference points. You know, so what that means is basically like, I mean, you don't know what tempo someone's gonna call something, so you have to really put some thought into this and really like try to figure out how you're gonna approach it. You know, so as soon as you heard the tempo counted off, your mind should automatically think like, okay, so you can break it down. You know, Oscar Peterson Trio. When I think of Oscar Peterson Trio, I think they're great at everything that they do. But one thing that sticks out to me is how they play medium tempos, right? So you have, essentially in this music, you have a few different tempos. You got ballads, you got medium tempos, you got medium up tempos, right? You got up tempos, and then you got what I call attic tempos, right? So what this tempo, what tempo do you think this is in?
Like a medium up.
Yeah, somewhere around there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it was medium, I would probably think Ray Brown, Ed Thigpen, Oscar Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
Medium up tempo, I would go somewhere around, you know, Philly Joe, Paul Chambers, Ray Garland. Also, you know, back to the medium tempos, you know, you got Ahmad Jamal Trio.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a lot of different, you know, ones who quote unquote specialize in certain areas of his music. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, so for this medium up tempo, you know, Ron, Tony, and Herbie, the reason why they're so innovative is because they pretty much embody all of the stuff that came before them, and then they added something more to it, you know. So you can always use them as a reference. I would say Philly Joe Redgar, you know, Paul Chambers for this tempo, or Ron, Tony, and Herbie. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's a quick way for you to get to the shit quickly. You know what I'm saying? Instead of fishing around, you know, trying to find where and how you're gonna approach this song in the moment. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you don't want to always have to think about this stuff. You know what I mean? But you know, over time, you won't have to as much. You know, and aside from that, you know, so we went from the intro into the song. I'm not quite sure if you played something in between that, but you don't have to play a warning sign. You know, you don't have to give a warning sign that you're going, you know, into 4. You know, I think the most hip shit that I heard was Tommy Flanagan Trio. I can't remember what record. Peter Washington, Kenny Washington, you know, and they would go from a 2-fill, or even just, you know, go from just, you know, normal time, if it was a ballad or something, and just go straight into the 4. Bing, 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 bing. There's no ka-ka, bing all the time.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I think bass players and drummers have that shit bad. You know, they feel like they always got to play in space. I think it's hip when you don't play in space as well, right? So when you get to that point where you start walking, it has to be comfortable. You know, when you start walking, you have to share it to the point where you know that you sound good.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a specific song that you're, you know, practicing, you know, don't stop until you can truthfully be honest with yourself and be like, that shit swinging. You see what I'm saying? And it's gonna take time, you know. Let's try it one more time. 1, 2, intro. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you're already behind the beat, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? You want
Just trying to play relaxed.
yeah.
Like
Let me
this
put this input up a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you still have to play relaxed. I mean, playing on top doesn't mean that you're not playing relaxed. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it just means that there's some forward motion to it. Okay, so your tempo has already dropped tremendously.
During the solo?
During your solo, a lot of bass players, and you know, sometimes it's not even bass players' fault. A lot of times, for whatever reason, when the bass player solos, cats check out, you know.
Mhm.
So what happens is the energy drops, right? That's why I tell drummers, don't stop playing on my solo. Play all that shit you played, you know, behind everybody else on mine. You know what I mean? Because the energy is going to drop and the tempo is going to drop, and then by the time you get back to the head out, it's going to be a whole nother song.
Yeah.
Okay? So, and also too, you have to be aware of, you know, just the language, you know, that we're speaking. I mean, this music, I'm not quite sure what you just played solo wise. You know, it sounded good, but I think like you have to make sure that, you know, you're speaking the language. You know, I think we talked about that. It's really as simple as like, you know, when you have you have a child, you don't, they don't know a lot of words, so it's like they can't have adult conversations. So we have here a lot of times is a whole bunch of cats having their children musically, trying to have adult conversations. So not until they, until they learn how to really speak the language, then they can have those conversations. And then also too, a step further, when you hear cats that are credible musicians, obviously, and you don't quite understand what they're saying, it's not because they don't know the language, it's because perhaps they're being innovative at that point, but you have to learn how to speak the language before you can be innovative with it, right? Yeah, let me play this so I don't have to change it. I mean, you understand what I said. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, what? And if I was just to start mumbling at you right now, you'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? That's how it sounds when I hear some cats. It's like, I don't know what you're saying, So, we can talk about different ways to, well, I guess one of the ways that we're getting to that is the Cheryl, transcribing that, which we can work on too. Now, actually. So, let's try that. You got the head. Basically, there's a period. Well, I'll start like this. Like, the only reason when you see a cat like Herbie Hancock, winning Grammys, taking pictures, and nobody sees all of the work that he's put in. They only see him in his life. But the only reason that he's there is because he just simply worked harder than the other person, and